Good morning. These are Day Texts with Greg Stafford. We meet every weekday morning at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to consider a portion of the biblical record, the books of the Bible that tell us about the history of humankind, specifically as it relates to the worship of the God Jah. And it also talks about the coming of a Messiah, whom we identify as Jesus. So we also talk about history and other texts, some non-biblical texts that might give us something to benefit from, to start our day. So we meet like this so that we can begin reflecting on some of the more important things that we can also use to benefit from or to share with others. Today I'm reading from the biblical book called 2 Thessalonians. It's a letter attributed to the Apostle Paul, a second letter, and written around the middle of the first century, and maybe a little towards the middle to the third quarter of the first century. And we do have representation in some of the early papyri, like P30, dated to around the early 3rd century, so around 220, 210, 220. So we have outstanding textual transmission evidence for these New Testament letters and documents, so that when we read them, when we refer to them or believe them, we're believing in them because of the credibility not only of the document in terms of its history, its textual history, but the things that it says, the things that we're taught about our history, and that we can learn from to benefit in the future. So I'm going to read a couple verses from chapter 1 of 2 Thessalonians. I'm going to read verses 6, 7, and 10. I grouped certain texts together that I think will give us, a good sense of material that's talking about the same thing, and then we could pick from it a few points, talk about them, and we'll be on our way. So I'm going to read those texts, 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verses 6, 7, and 10. And there, Paul writes, "Indeed, it is a righteous thing with God to repay severe difficulty to those making severe difficulties for you." He's talking about the Christians there. "For you who are experiencing severe difficulty, there will be relief for us in the revelation of the Lord Jesus from heaven with his strong angels." Talking about the time when he's going to return. This is part of the Christian hope. We referred to it a little bit yesterday in 1 Thessalonians, where we talked about how it speaks of Jesus returning and the dead rising first, and then all the Christians alive at that time being gathered up with Jesus before he begins the judgment of the nations. So he's talking a little bit about that here, about how the relief will come when Jesus actually does return. And then in verse 10 it says, "Whenever it is he may come with his holy ones." That's us. If we're taken up, like Paul talked about in 1 Thessalonians, if we're alive when Jesus returns, or if we fall asleep in death. But he's talking about us. "Whenever it is he may come with his holy ones, even to be amazed at by all those who trusted, because our testimony was accepted among you during that time." So it's going to be amazing, I'm sure, if we're present for the time when the heavens rip open and the Son of God steps down with his angels and restores the earth to the way it should have been long ago. This is our hope, and so we share it with each other because we want to maintain our encouragement, not become depressed or downhearted because of some of the things in the world, many of which represent no hope. So let me just touch on, we've talked a little bit about how we have a hope, and how our hope is that Jesus will return, gather all the living Christians, resurrect the dead, and then he will judge the nations, separate the sheep from the goats, and the people who are deserving of life will receive it. Deserving in the sense that he approves of them and accepts them. As the book of Revelation says, they wash their robes in the blood of the Lamb. It's talking about the future, though. So for now, notice in verse 6 it says, "It's a righteous thing with God to repay severe difficulty for those making severe difficulties for you. Very easy for us to think we need to strike back. Sometimes maybe we do. But remember this, if somebody is paying you evil, if somebody is treating you wrongly and causing you to experience severe difficulties, like we read about here, if you choose to take it into your own hands and deal with the situation, you might be effective. You might be able to help with your situation. And all of us should be prepared to stand up for ourselves and for what is right. But we're talking about repaying severe difficulty. It's one thing to stand up for yourself, to try to stop people from abusing you, causing the severe difficulty. But the best thing you can do, and I've learned this through experience, and not always doing it correctly, but over time, seeing the results of doing it right and doing it wrong, if you trust in Jah and you pray to Him to help you with the difficulty, He will. I've never had a situation where I've been in extreme difficulty and I've prayed to Jah and I've not been given help. Never. That's why I'm still here. I've had difficulty because I brought it on myself, and sometimes people brought it on me unfairly. But I just kept doing it. I kept going. I prayed to Jah. I remembered the account about Michael and Jesus, Satan, how when Satan was arguing with Michael over Moses' body, Michael just said, may Jehovah rebuke you. May Jehovah address you. And that is the right move, right? Because who better to address someone doing evil than Jah? Nobody. Not even Michael the archangel. Because Jah knows everything. He can see everything. He's the one who can repay people who are being evil exactly right. He doesn't do it too much or too little. Jah knows the exact measure for every single one of us. We don't. We might know what a person has done to us, and so we want to repay them, evil because they were evil to us, like it says in verse 6. But we're not going to measure it right. We're not going to be able to measure out the repayment because we can't see everything. We can't see the motives, the intention, the circumstance, all of the circumstances. But Jah can, and He does. So if you go to Him and you pray, these people are persecuting me, I'm getting severe difficulty trying to praise your name, I'll keep going, whatever you have to do, sometimes we have to endure. But Jah watches. He watches you enduring. He watches them persecuting you. And then when the exact right time comes, as only He would know, boom, He's going to bring judgment upon that evil person. And He's going to make things right. I've seen it my whole life. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So I'm confident that you've seen it too. And that both of us, all of us, will see it again if we trust in Jah to repay those who work evil towards us. So keep these things in mind. Just a few texts from one letter written by early Christians. But they give us such good reminders. Right? Try not to repay evil to others. Do what you have to do to stand up for yourself and defend yourself and to stop what is happening. But if you trust in Jah while you're doing that, the exact measure, the correctly measured repayment will be exactly what He gives. Because He knows the exact repayment. He doesn't give anything less or more. He gives exactly what it deserves. So Jah is the ultimate judge in that way. And that's why looking to Him will give you the best outcome on any day. So please keep these in mind. I'll go ahead and end the video here. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to it every morning where we can start. It gets me up. It gets me going. I hope it does for you as well. I know some of you are going, where you are on the earth, it's evening. So take these thoughts with you. Rest with them. Dwell on them. And then you wake up feeling the same way. Have a wonderful day. May Jah bless you. Thank you.